What is pleasure, biologically speaking? What is the objective value of pleasure? The answer to both of those questions is, I don't know, but I do have some musings on the subject, born of my notes on hedonism. I couldn't think of a better way to make a video out of them, so I'm clumping them together and talking about them separately. Not very sexy, yes, but neither am I. Insert punchline here. Long time ago, in ancient Greece, the Cyrenaics or Kyreniacs or something else, the very creators of the sensual hedonist Greek school of philosophy had the following to say about pleasure. The wise person should be in control of pleasures rather than being slave to them. Otherwise, pain will result. And this requires judgment to evaluate the different pleasures of life. Regard should be paid to law and custom, because even though those things have no intrinsic value on their own, violating them will lead to unpleasant penalties being imposed by others. Likewise, friendship and justice are useful because of the pleasure they provide. Thus, the Cyrenaics believed in the hedonistic value of social obligation and altruistic behavior. This quote is from Wikipedia. What got my noggin juice swirling is the other claims made by the very same people. To quote Wikipedia again, Cyrenaicism deduces a single universal aim for all people: pleasure. Furthermore, all feeling is momentary and homogeneous. Past and future pleasure have no real existence for us, and that among present pleasures there is no distinction of kind. Socrates had spoken of the higher pleasures of the intellect. The Cyrenaics denied the validity of this distinction and said that bodily pleasures, being more simple and more intense, were preferable. Momentary pleasure, preferably of a physical kind, is the only good for humans. If I had to go on a limb, I'd say you probably think the Cyrenaics are absolute idiots. And I understand, I do. But what if we assume that they're not? The benefit of the doubt. What are they saying if they're not idiots? Here's my take. So their bottom line is, physical pleasure is best and there is no distinction between different kinds of pleasures. Perhaps their line of thinking was, pleasure is just a signal in the brain, although they probably wouldn't have put it that way. I'm not sure they knew much about brains and signals in them at the time. In any case, if you look at pleasure that way, it makes sense that direct physical stimulus would be stronger, as they believed. And also, the source of the pleasure doesn't matter, as all pleasure gets translated to signals into the brain. It kind of makes sense. If you break things down to their base components, it's easier to work around them. Imagine if some rude person cuts you off in traffic, or your crush leaves you on scene for hours and you get angry. But then, instead of doing whatever it is you do when you get angry, you think to yourself, that's just a signal in my brain. And then you spend the next 30 minutes thinking about the inner workings of your brain and how your life is basically a string of zeros and ones, and then you feel a gaping emptiness in your soul because you now view yourself as a piece of meat running a rudimentary operation system and going about life being pushed around by external stimulus. Or, whatever you guys are prone to doing. The "it's just a signal in my brain" line of thinking is probably quite useful for day-to-day life and making impartial, logical decisions. That way, you can also decide that you want a specific pleasure signal in your brain and work towards achieving it in a cold and calculated manner, you depraved psycho. Worth noting is that in that line of thinking, we should consider that quantity also matters. Meaning, a lot of mental pleasure would still trump a little bit of physical pleasure, which sometimes changes the equation without disproving the Cyrenaic claims. Anyway, the second thing I wanted to talk about sprouts from the butting of heads of two types of hedonism: quantitative and qualitative. Those are exactly as you guessed. Quantitative says more pleasure, always better, while qualitative says that the quality of the pleasure also matters, where the distinction is something like sadistic pleasure worse than altruistic pleasure and some such. So I read in some article that since quantitative hedonism cannot compare lives, it cannot be used to guide behavior since it cannot instruct us on which life to aim for. If that doesn't make any sense to you, it basically says that since the different types of pleasures don't matter because we're aiming only for quantity, then we can't use quantitative hedonism to guide our actions in life because all pleasures are the same. Do we go for pleasure A or B or C? There's no clear guidance in this type of hedonism because it claims that all those pleasures are equal. Pretty boring, I know, but it got me thinking. I don't believe that different pleasures can have the same value, even to the same person. Depending on circumstances, different pleasures can hold different values, even to the same person. Meaning, today you might enjoy gulping ice cream a great deal, but tomorrow you might not really want to eat any ice cream at all. It's the same pleasure, but the value is different on different days. So trying to calculate pleasure to come up with a formula for the best life is a fool's errand. Qualitative hedonism holds more water, but we need to surrender that the quality of different pleasures is not constant. And then we couldn't really calculate anything beyond, right now I want to eat ice cream. Remember, the whole point of this is to have guidance for how best to go about life. But if that guidance is highly circumstantial, then it's no good. Anyway, just random things that popped into my head like popcorn. I should get some popcorn. If you thought those were interesting, you might also find interesting my discussion of prudential hedonism here. Or, if I kept making videos, here you should be able to see my latest upload. Fancy YouTube mechanics. Anyway, thanks, bye. Subscribe, bye. Thanks, bye.